Our menus are challenging because Chinese culture serves in multiple courses. So very common very common to have a dinner with 10, 12 courses. They're small, but they keep rolling just one after another. So when it comes to food and wine matching, I wouldn't give it too much thought for Asia, but what I would recommend, I'm advocating you pick one key dish in the menu, the signature dish. It could be the Peking duck, the braised abalone, something special, and that's the moment when you pour your special wine. The rest of the meal, let them drink what they want. It can't go without mention that the Chinese wine industry is growing. You know, I've mentioned this industry for years and no one was interested until this year. Suddenly people realize China is a large producer of wine, and if they get their act together, they will rock our wine world. And I send this as a caveat to Chile because much of your platform in Asia has been around low-value wine. And once China gets its act together, you're going to be in trouble. So please focus on the boutique, focus on the prestige, focus on regional stories, create a real identity for us so that when this happens, you're well positioned for the future. The good news for you, as I mentioned earlier, is they're eager to buy bulk wine to meet the demand locally. Why have you never heard of Chinese wine? Because 96% of the wine is consumed in China. And no one knows for sure, but they're the 5th or 6th largest, shall we say, bottlers of wine, including the imported bulk wine. Okay. Here are just a couple quick shots to show you what the wineries look like in China. Here's something very interesting. In most parts of the world, let's face it, every wine lover loves to find the little boutique winery, something small, unique, family business, artisanal. But in China, if I speak to people and I say, oh, you should try this wine, it's a lovely little boutique winery. And they say, oh, must not be very good. I say, why not very good? And they say, well, if it were good, they would be a big, huge winery. So in that sense, some of the larger wineries here actually have good positioning for China. They view you as highly, highly successful businesses. Now I'd like to shift a little bit of focus to Hong Kong. And it's always a little confusing. What is China? What is Hong Kong? Even we are not sure ourselves. We use the terms differently as we please. Usually, if you're speaking about Greater China, Greater China, it's an expression we use to encompass Hong Kong, Macau, mainland China, and Taiwan. Okay? The Taiwanese don't use it so much because they don't think they're part of China, but we do. So now, Hong Kong will also, while you're there, if you're in Hong Kong, we often refer to China as a separate entity, or we'll just say the mainland. A few people will say the motherland, but that's a very old-fashioned expression. So you must be clear when you're talking to people about shipping terms and places of doing business. Does it include Hong Kong or not? And what's Hong Kong's role in all this? Well, Hong Kong is like the New York of China. We are a little bit apart in style, in temperament, and we're the trendsetters for all of China. At present, 90% of our tourism business in Hong Kong is now mainland Chinese. So we have huge influence on what is considered luxurious and prestigious. I'm increasingly worried that I meet winemakers that say, oh, I'm not going to bother with Hong Kong, I'm going straight to China. Well, I suggest you do both because we're the ones who set your brand image for you in most cases. So please do take a look. Now, the Hong Kong government did something shocking 3 years ago. I'm sure many of you heard they completely eliminated our wine duty. We're the only metropolis in the world to have done this. And their thinking was to create Hong Kong, position Hong Kong as the entry point, the center of the Asian wine trade. Now, my colleague Lisa will want to do battle because Singapore also vies for the same position. But I would say when it comes to China, it's Hong Kong is the access point. Now, not a day goes by when you don't hear about the Hong Kong markets having big, deep pockets, spending a fortune at the auctions. These headlines are all from 2011. It's very valid. And it's quite confusing. Because there's no tax, the government then went on to eliminate certification. You don't even need to register to import. So nobody knows how many importers there are. So I have a book here that I launched in November, and forgive me for showing it off, but I wrote it for wineries. You're exactly why I did this, because I was receiving emails every day from winemakers around the world saying, tell me how to get into the Hong Kong market. Who are the best importers? Who would like my wines? And of course it was sucking me dry, so I finally wrote a book. And this tells you everything there is to know about the Hong Kong market. I carried 20 in my luggage, so I'd be grateful if during break you could buy 20 from me so I don't have to carry them back, but otherwise they're accessible through the website. But what I tried to address in these, we surveyed all our importers and asked them 40 questions about their business, payment terms, portfolio composition, etc. And here are a couple things that we learned. Of course, the market's highly fragmented in Hong Kong. We have 350 importers, 250 super active importers. They're all expanding their portfolio. We asked them to designate which 3 countries they were expanding. Interestingly, very keen on Argentina. So I think you guys need to get in there and push a little harder. And then a real thrill was there's a lot of mid-market growth at last, because if I'd spoken to you 3 years ago, I would have said, we're bipolar, high-end, low-end. And then of course we have auction mania. Here's the composition of our value segments. The 31% of the market in wholesale terms, the importers are buying from $7 to $18. 32%, we now move from $18 to $36 wholesale. This is a great, great market segment to be in. And I have to tell you, on the value segment, the 9%, frankly, I assumed it was Chile, not because I think you're a value segment, but because you're all over our markets and have a strong presence at banquets and weddings. But in fact, it's mostly France. So the good news for you is you're moving out of that segment and into the mid-market. In case you're interested, luxury market for us, which is substantial, as you see, that's 130 US minimum wholesale. So that's the kind of money we're spending in Hong Kong. Lastly, I thought you would be interested in understanding the Hong Kong segments. We're definitely a food and beverage oriented market. And the numbers, even for me, were a bit of a myth buster, because we think of our food and beverage as being 60, 70% of the market. But in fact, direct sales is huge. And what we noted by the direct sales is we buy in Hong Kong and then we carry it into the restaurant. So it's still being consumed in restaurants, in food outlets, but most of us are increasingly buying directly from the importer, which of course is very frustrating for the restaurant. So when it comes to your restaurant strategy, think carefully, because if it gets on the list, then I can't bring it to the restaurant. And it may never sell off the list. On the other hand, if you can get on the top list, of course it positions your brands beautifully, even if you never sell a bottle at the restaurant itself. Some brand building entry points in Hong Kong, they're all listed in the book. Here a number of times I've been asked what's the difference between the November Wine Fair, Van Expo, Shanghai Fair. You can explore all of that. I'm a director of this wine competition, which is a good entry point for Hong Kong. But there's so much going on, societies and organizations. There's many ways to come in the market. But most importantly, you see in red, we need winemaker visits. We're spoiled rotten in Hong Kong. We've gotten very used to the Bordelais, the Bordeaux producers coming to see us every week. Margot's there 4 times a year. Lafitte's there at least 3 or 4 times a year, Palmer, Cost. So we expect you to come see us. And I think that's partly because Asia's all about relationships. So once we know you and become friends with you, then we're truly interested in the wine. So I'd be a little bit cautious about who you send, because we like to meet the owners and the winemakers themselves. If you cannot send owner winemaker, please send a group, a regional group, because that will then draw the crowd. But if you send one marketing agent or one representative, it's very difficult to get a group out for dinner. Okay. And finally, I just wanted to mention a couple market opportunities for China and for Hong Kong. First of all, you've got a great advantage because you have having judged all week, fabulous red wine portfolio, and that's what we love in Asia. But I do think there's some opportunity to push people toward white wine. I was super impressed by your Rieslings, which, as Patricio mentioned in his speech, was quite a sorpresa. So please put those into the market. Sparkling wine we love. We often drink sparkling wine and carry it right to the dinner table and switch to red. Gift packaging, I mentioned earlier, please keep it into consideration. Labels, Chinese are very sort of distrustful because we have a lot of counterfeit everything. And even, let's say, the history of its news and newspapers aren't always 100% real. So they're intense readers of labels. They want to know, is it true? What's going on? So think very carefully about what you put on your label and is it relevant to the Chinese market. I think there's a great opportunity to create some cuisine branded wine. So get a group of producers together and focus on Sichuan food, for example. Lifestyle appellations, great. Please build them and give us all really good awareness of the regions in Chile. Wine tourism. Now this is a tough one. After 40 hours of flying to get here, it's a long trip for wine tourism, but if you can get people here, it makes all the difference. So my recommendation to you, skiing is all the rage at the moment in Hong Kong. All the sort of wealthy Chinese go to Japan or Whistler or Chamonix to ski now. So you might want to try to build some sort of relationship with a skiing wine trip together, or of course the Galapagos or something else adventurous. So I think you would have to bundle wine tourism because of the distance. Education, please emphasize wherever you go, give good education because in my studies, most of the education is from the winemakers themselves. Chinese believe red wine is very healthy, so it's kind of okay to promote health benefits. In fact, a recent study showed that ladies drink 1 glass of red wine before they go to sleep because it's healthy. I actually think it's just healthy for the marriage. And lastly, branded toasts. And in Asia, and especially in China, we're big toasters. Every single course that comes to the table, we stop the table conversation and we break it up with a new toast. At my wedding, I had 140 table toasts. So be prepared for lots of toasting, and I think there's a great opportunity in this. So I came up with a few ideas. I thought you could create a toast branded, "Enjoy the show with Carmine de Peumo," or "Don't work too hard with Villard," or "One last kiss with Erasmus." But of course, we are very known for our mistresses in Asia. It's just the way it is in Asia, lots of mistresses out there. So I also thought, wow, great opportunity, Carmenere to have an affair. But we're also very money focused, so you might want to push rich and wealth. So I thought a few dollars more with Don Melchor. But my favorite of all is Wines of Chile every day. Cheers.
Wines of Chile, the natural choice.